Hi there.
Hello everyone. A very warm evening. A very warm evening to everyone present over here. I'm Namrata Hari from SRM IST Ramapuram. Hello everyone. Hack the mountains. Very warm evening to everyone present over here. I'm Namrata. Is my voice echoing? Um, okay, sorry. For me, it is echoing, so that's the problem. Okay, I'll start again. A very warm evening to everyone present over here. I am. I guess I'll. Really sorry about that, but my voice has been echoing a lot. But anyways, I'll start again. Last time. Hack the Mountains 2.0 welcomes you all for another session of Qubits. I know all of you are very excited, so let's continue having this same enthusiasm for this event, even for the upcoming events as well. Today, we have a speaker, Alexander Meijers, who is a well-known global XR tech lead at Avanade. He has meticulously perfected Microsoft Enterprise XR and would be better than no one else to guide us through the world of Microsoft Enterprise XR. Make most of the session, as it is an honor to have such an esteemed mentor to guide you here today. Hack the Mountain welcomes you, Mr. Alexander. Over to you. The stage is all yours. As it is an honor to have
Thank you. Hi there. Nice to meet you all. Can you share my deck? Thanks. Yes. So welcome everyone. Hope everyone is safe in these times. Today, I'm going to take you through the immersive world of Microsoft Enterprise XR. So it means I'm going to show you all the things which are possible when you use Microsoft technology in the extended reality space. So my name is Alexander Meijers. I'm a global XR tech lead working for Avanade in the Digital Sales and Services Center of Excellence. I'm also a Windows development MVP for mixed reality. One of the things I do in the community is I'm running a Dutch user group called Mixed Reality User Group, and we are organizing events like these on a monthly basis around global XR. Around XR, which is called Global XR Talks, and we even do a one-year event, one time once a year for a 3-day event with more than 50-60 sessions around augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality, mixed reality, and even web XR. Now, so the goal for today is to explain first of all, what is XR, and then go through several parts which are interesting. One is talking about devices, which are from a Microsoft perspective. Second one is about the modern workplace. The third one is about first-party apps. I will explain all these things later. And the last one is about mixed reality services. So let's start with XR. So what is XR? Now, for me, you actually have 3 different types of realities. One is virtual reality. Now, as you all know, virtual reality means you are completely immersed into a digital world. So everything around you is digital. And one of the biggest challenges with virtual reality is that people lose the environment where they are actually in, the real environment. And then you have actually augmented reality. Now, augmented reality means that we're enriching the actual world with digital information. And digital information can be like audio, objects, everything around that. But with augmented reality, it's always from the person's perspective. Now, when you talk about mixed reality, you're talking about augmented reality plus, because with mixed reality, the device you're using is able to understand the world around him. So he's able to attach digital content, for example, to a wall, a table, or something else. Now, everything around that, so the collection name for that is actually called extended reality. Now, for me, Enterprise XR can be placed in 5 different pillars. One is about devices. So we have a number of devices, and a lot of this will come on during the session. So you think about Kinect for Azure, think about HoloLens, think about virtual reality headsets, but even mobile devices. When we talk about a modern workplace, we're talking about the integration of XR into Office. But SharePoint Online nowadays has SharePoint Spaces. I'm going to show something about that too. Now, then we have the first-party apps. And the first-party apps are apps which you can actually install, you pay a license, and you can directly use it. You don't have to do anything else to use them. And there are specifically 3 at the market at the moment. The 4th pillar is about mixed reality services. So at the moment when you start building your own applications, these services become very interesting because they can help you to overcome a lot of issues which are often difficult to implement. Now, the 5th one, I will talk less about that one. It's about blending everything together. So it means building your own applications and integrate it with platforms like Dynamics, like the data platform, like digital twins, Internet of Things and intelligence. Because the power of using XR technology is not just an application running on a device, it is combining everything together with backend systems and use that data in such a way that people and organizations can benefit from. So to optimize processes in principle. Now, if you look at the space of Microsoft XR, there's a lot. So in the bottom, you see the storages, which are the storage for, in principle, for everything what runs on Dynamics, like the first-party apps. And you have Azure storage where you need to think about things like IoT and your mixed reality services. Now, on the right side, you see clearly that you have your tools to start building yourself. And on the left side, you see mainly the apps you can use, which are out of the box. So the first-party apps, but also SharePoint Spaces, are apps you can directly use in your environment. Now, and on top of that, there are a number of products released by different third-party vendors of Microsoft, which build on top of those tools additional functionality. Now, let's talk about devices, because these are the coolest ones, and that's actually the type of thing where everything is around. So when we talk about virtual reality, we have the virtual reality headset, so everyone knows those. Now, when we talk about augmented reality, you have the mobile phones like the iOS and Android. But if you look at currently how augmented reality on mobile phones work, you can almost name it mixed reality because they're able to identify the room and the environment around that. But if you talk about true mixed reality devices, you're talking about the HoloLens, but also about the Kinect for Azure. And about these two, I want to explain a little bit more. So first of all, Microsoft HoloLens, in this case HoloLens 2, is an enterprise mixed reality device. So it's not really meant for the consumer market. And one of the challenges is that it is very comparable within Windows laptop, with the difference is that instead of a 2D screen, you actually have a 3D space around yourself. Now, other things what the device does is it's able to understand natural gestures. If you can see in the left corner, it means I can manipulate objects in space by touching them, by turning them, by resizing them. But secondly, it also has eye recognition. And there are two things which are interesting about that, because one is it knows where I'm looking at. So I can actually look at a button or look at a specific piece of text. And when I come to, for example, at the bottom part of the text, it starts scrolling. But you can also use it for identification. So HoloLens is able to identify someone who is logging into the device instead of entering a username and password, which is, if you think about for the enterprise, think about companies where people work outside, they don't have time to enter their information. Now, the biggest thing about HoloLens is that it uses a set of cameras, actually 5. 4 are grayscale cameras, 1 is a depth camera. And those cameras are able to make a scan of the environment, a blueprint, you can say. And that blueprint is continuously stored in a device and can be reused to initially to put holograms and other objects in the room and let them stay there. And that's actually what mixed reality can do. I can place a hologram on the top of the table and walk around it without the hologram moving from its place, and then even look at the other side to the hologram. Now, the second device, which is an interesting one, but you haven't seen it much, is what we call the Azure Kinect. And the Azure Kinect is a device which has a lot of sensors in there. The camera, the depth sensors are the same as HoloLens 2, which makes it so remarkable, while the device is 7 or 8 of its price. It doesn't have the technology what HoloLens does by using all the information coming from the device, but still it allows you to quickly build interesting applications which can be used for any kind of situation. Now, the device itself has a 2D, 3D color camera. It has a depth camera. It is a 1 megapixel time of flight sensor. There is a motion sensor on board, and gyroscope, accelerators, even a microphone array, which allows you to see from which side sound is coming from. And you can actually connect multiple devices. Now, the use cases for these are a lot, but one I will pick out, which is typical for nowadays situation, is healthcare. So one of these things actually can do is it can monitor based on body movement, and then you can actually build an application around it which monitors the patient. And by using the information and using intelligence, they are able to identify if a person, for example, is start to fall out of bed, which then they can send a notification to the nurse, and the nurse will actually go into the room before the patient is actually falling. So you can imagine what everything is possible in there. Now, the modern workplace, something you wouldn't expect there is XR in. So one of the things, of course, when you do XR, and like a PowerPoint I'm now showing, is that I can actually use 3D objects within PowerPoint nowadays. And it's not only in PowerPoint, you can actually use it in anyone. And you see that the integration of using 3D elements in different tools of the Office 365 environment is growing. Now, one of them is particularly, and that is within SharePoint Online. Now, for people who don't know, SharePoint Online is like a document management system, which runs in online, which runs in Office 365, of course. And you're allowed, for example, to create what we call team sites. Now, a team site can have lists, which are like a document library, which can have an item list. And those lists contain data, and you can visualize that data on the team site, play around with it. You can create pages. Now, one of the things they have is nowadays is called SharePoint Spaces. And what SharePoint Spaces allows you to do is create a specific 3D page. And that 3D page is based on the content you can find within the SharePoint site. And it allows you, for example, to build virtual tours by putting the 360 videos, as you can see here, into SharePoint, and then use an environment to actually show it. But think about training. Instead of bringing people to very hazardous environments, why not let them train off-site and understand what they're going to experience when they actually go into the field? And that can actually be done by using VR or on WebXR on the screen. Both will work. Now, another thing could, for example, think about a content catalog. So let's say that I have a lot of items in the organization, and those items are all defined within a list in 3D objects. And I'm now actually able to view a certain 3D object, but also see the numbers around that. And as last one, but not least, is definitely learning. So it gives you the ability to create quickly learning modules for internal people and to understand better how to understand things within the organization. Now, it works cross-platform, supports 2D and 3D content. It's secured because it leverages everything of Office 365 and SharePoint Online. And it is and will be extendable. Now, the next one is first-party apps, and we have a number of demos here. So when we talk about first-party apps, we're talking about apps which can be directly used what we do within the enterprise. And that means that these apps are very easy to start using for your clients. Now, to explain it a little bit more, we have 3 applications which you can just download on a device, and it depends a little bit on the application on which device it's able to download. I will explain that later. And each of the applications can directly be used separately or in combination with a backend platform like Dynamics. We have Remote Assist, and Remote Assist is a application which allows you look over the shoulder. So let's say I can call an expert and he will help me. Guides is a application which allows me to build augmented training. And Product Visualize is a way of creating a seamless integration with your sales process by visualizing the objects you're selling. Now let's start with Remote Assist. Now, Remote Assist is specifically meant to support on distance. Now, with COVID-19, this is one of the major apps in the last year. If you look at how many clients we actually had in Avanade who wanted to start using this, it's phenomenal. It's just people start to understand. And it also means that, to give you an idea, I always expected that within the 1.5, 2 years from now, XR will grow to a more mature level. But actually in the last year, a lot has happened. And applications like Remote Assist has helped with that. So how does it work? So first of all, you have a person, a first-line worker, who is getting a notification that there is an issue which is going on. So she goes, in this case, to the person and tries to help him out by using her knowledge, which she has to perform her job. But at some point, you cannot resolve all the issues. So what she actually wants to do is call in the help of an expert. And in this case, she uses a mobile phone. That person uses Microsoft Teams, and that person can actually freeze the screen and then make some notifications, like you have to press these buttons. And then the person using the mobile phone will actually see on the right spot the notifications in the screen, while even moving the phone. Now, let's say that the person needs both hands to be used. So instead of using a mobile phone, she wants to use an HoloLens, in this case HoloLens 2. Now, the principle is the same. She logs on iris scan, and then as soon as she's logged on, she can actually select the expert she wants to call. Now, all the things you see in the screen which are happening are actually able to do with HoloLens 2. And this gives a really immersive experience. So she can move the person a little bit away, look at the cabinet with all the cables. Normally, you wouldn't suspect a cable like this, but in this case, it's more an example which shows you I need to use both hands to remove the cables and see what I need to remove or what I need to replace. Now, and that's all what Remote Assist is all about. Now, Remote Assist itself is mainly used when you need expert assistance. And what normally happens within enterprise organizations, that people are sent over by airplane or need to travel, and they can spend 2 or 3 days on board of a ship or on a specific plant or location. And using Remote Assist allows them to do, for example, support, and you can actually support multiple people in the same day, which makes it far more interesting and a better return of investment. Now, what you also can do is using it for, let's say, inspections. And it can actually be used also for audits, which I will show a little bit later. Now, doing Remote Assist can be done in 3 ways: a one-to-one, a group, and a meeting call. Now, one-to-one is mostly used when I need some help and I call an expert. I put on the device and I call the expert, and the person is helping me out, and that's actually the one-to-one. What I also could do is using a group call. So let's say that I invite a number of people, and you could see that as a train-the-trainer scenario. So I'm explaining around an actual machine what needs to be done, and all my students are logged in with Teams and can actually look over my shoulder, seeing what I'm doing. They can make annotations, which I can respond on. Now, the same can be done with meeting. So let's say that this was actually an Outlook meeting. I could put up the device and become part of this meeting. And then you can actually look through the meeting over my shoulder and see what I'm doing. Now, initially it was also always HoloLens and Teams, but nowadays you can actually do HoloLens to HoloLens calls, HoloLens to meetings, and it even doesn't matter if it's on mobile device or it's on Teams in the console application or on the web. Now, how does that work? I'm going to show you an example of that. So first of all, let's show how Remote Assist works with a mobile device. Now, in this case, you see Paul. Now, you see Spencer Lowe. Apologies for that. And what you see here on my phone is that I'm going to give Spencer a call. So I click on Spencer, saying launch the call. You see the call coming in. So Spencer's picking up the phone. And let's move that a little bit on the side. So Spencer's actually now watching to my camera. And on my side, the camera actually asked me to move a little bit around to get acquainted with the environment and understand it on a 3D level. Now, that takes a little bit of time. And what I'm now able to do is, let's see if that is going to happen. So what you see is on the Spencer Lowe is actually seeing what I'm seeing. And now I have a solar box on the left side, which I'm going to use. That's here. And I'm going to make some notations because I want to explain to Spencer Lowe what my problem is. So I say, I don't understand the DC converter. Can you help me with that? Spencer sees on his side, the arrow actually, where it's located. And I also said, yeah, there needs to be a change in the connection. So in this case, I'm the one who's using Remote Assist, and the expert, Spencer Lowe, is using Teams, and I'm doing my annotations. And as you can see, moving around in my phone, the annotations stay at their place where I've put them. And this allows me very easily to indicate what I'm doing and to give an idea of, in this case, the expert. Now, what I also, when I do this, I can then save a snapshot, which is actually stored within Teams or on OneDrive, or even at the end of the call, able to do that within Dynamics if it's connected to, see, Paul Roth is getting an image now in the Teams side. Now, I can also do that through Dynamics if it's connected to a certain asset, which I will show you later with Dynamics Field Services. Now, it's also possible, I'm not sure if it's in this video, but I don't think so. But yeah, as you can see now, Paul says, I want to edit also. I want to indicate something. So as soon as Paul says editing, his screen freezes, and he's now able to pinpoint a certain part of the device. And I'm pointing again to the same part, and I'm saying you need to replace that fuse and that fuse. Now, you already see on the right side, me using Remote Assist, that the notifications are at a place, and they're helping me out. Now, this was mobile device. So how does it look for HoloLens? Now, in this case, again, I'm Paul Rudd, so I'm calling Spencer. Now, Paul Rudd is calling you, Spencer gets a call, and you're now going to look through what Spencer Lowe sees. So Spencer Lowe can actually see through my device and sees the room, which is going through the device. Now, Spencer Lowe sees that I'm moving that away, and I can actually now do the same things like notifications. And I'm sorry for the screen going a little bit from left to right side. That's more like nobody. It's very difficult sometimes to film these things because you need to keep your head very still. For a user of the device, it's like looking around without any delays or anything whatsoever. Now, this again works in two ways. So I can make notifications, and as you can see now, Spencer's also making some editings, so what I actually will see. So these things will stay also in the room. Now, Dynamics 365 for Remote Assist is called Dynamics 365 for Remote Assist. But Remote Assist can work without Dynamics 365. But as soon as you start using together with Dynamics, you get a lot of other interesting functionalities. Think about one is to join a one-time call. So normally when I'm doing this, when I'm doing a Remote Assist, I require to have the Remote Assist application, and I need to pay a license for that. And everyone who's using Remote Assist, not the one who's using Teams, but the one who's using Remote Assist, requires to pay a license. So one-time call is more supposed to be used for support engineers, helping consumers which don't have Remote Assist and also don't have licenses. So that's one of the examples I want to show. The second one, which is a really interesting one, is that Dynamics 365 Field Services is a CRM, configuration management system, which allows me to store assets. And what this actually allows me to do is doing asset capture. Means that I can connect to Dynamics and then capturing all kind of information and put that on the asset record within Dynamics. Now, these are two examples I want to show. So let's first start with inviting a user to join a one-time call with Microsoft Remote Assist. So in this case, we have Daisy Phillips, a support agent, and she gets a customer assigned to her. And the customer says, I have an espresso machine, I don't know, it makes a weird noise, I don't know what to do with it. I'm not sure how to dismantle it and how to replace some of the things. So she said, shall I set up a video call with you, a mixed reality video call? Now what she does is she then generates what we call a one-time link, and that link can then be sent to the person. That person gets the link on his or her mobile phone. Now, if you don't have Remote Assist yet installed, it will automatically install Remote Assist and starts it up. So the consumer in this case doesn't need Remote Assist. And now Daisy can actually indicate you need to replace this, you need to replace that, so you need to, so this is what you need to do. And she can actually help the consumer to explain all the steps she needs to do. Now, as soon when they hang up the call is gone and the consumer is not able to do the call anymore. All the information collected during the call is actually stored within Microsoft Dynamics. So the support agent can still see what she or he has done. Now, the second one is what we call asset capturing. Now, asset capturing is a way of, for example, doing an audit. And in some cases, you don't have a connection. And the cool thing about asset capture is that when I have made a connection to Dynamics, to the app, I can actually go offline and then do my asset capturing, which means taking pictures, taking a small video, writing text, and then bind that to the asset. And as soon if I'm connected to the internet, it will actually update the booking or the work order or whatsoever of the asset in Dynamics. But if I'm not connected, it will do that as soon as I start being connected. Now, how does that work? So again, I'm with HoloLens 2. I select assets, and I see a list of assets. So you see I created an asset called Switchbox. I can select that one. Now, there's nothing in there yet. And what I now could do is, for example, take a picture. So we take a picture, and the picture is then collected. Now imagine that you need to do an audit and you need to review the work of someone or your own, and you need to identify that you actually did the work. And this allows very easily by using a HoloLens 2 or even a mobile phone, by capturing data around the asset and connecting that to the asset and let it being stored in there. So as you can see, it's since I'm online, it will actually update it directly to Microsoft Dynamics 365. So that was Remote Assist. So the second app I want to discuss, which is a really cool, really interesting app, is Microsoft Dynamics 365 Guides. Again, it's part of the Dynamics family, but you don't need to have Dynamics to actually use this app. Now, what does it do? So the first thing you can do is create a training. So we have something called an author and an operator. So the author is the one who's creating the training, and we have an operator, that's the person who's executing the training. So in this case, the author collects great assets like videos, photos, 3D models, and he or she will write a sequence of steps. So each of the training consists of a number of tasks, and each task can consist of one or more steps. Now, that's done within a desktop application. Then the second step is the author puts on the HoloLens device and now connects the 3D assets or all the other elements to the exact place on the machine, in this case, the engine. Now, the third step is assigning the task to an operator. And the operator, which can then start the application in operator mode, and the guide will actually guide the operator through the steps she or he needs to do to actually perform the training. Now, all the data collected can then be used again to optimize the training or to support the operator. So imagine that you see that in some step, each of the operators takes a really long time. It means that maybe the step is too complicated and you need to change that. Now, the scenarios in which you can use this, think about, for example, operating a certain machine, which is normally, and you need to do a certain operation, and that operation is only done once per 6 months. So in some cases, it's really difficult to keep that into mind. So helping things like an augmented training can help with that. Now, there are two different ways of doing augmented training. One is doing it with an actual object, as you can see on the left one, where we have an engine. We use a 3D object, which shows a way of how to keep the tool and how the tool needs to be moved in which direction. It also explains then what needs to be done in that step. On the right side, you see an example where I don't have the actual object. I don't have an engine or a jet engine of an airplane. So in this case, I actually use a 3D object. Now, in previous guides, it was only executing the steps. But nowadays, since the end of last year, guides has the ability to do what we call to use spatial triggers. Now, spatial triggers means, and I'm going to show that in the example, means that I can position a certain part in space, and as soon as my hand touches that space, it triggers. And the trigger means going to a certain step in one of the tasks. Now, doing a virtual asset makes it really interesting, because when you put on spatial triggers, now I'm actually able to touch the virtual object, and then to actually, so I can actually ask a student, tell me where the rotor is, or tell me where the inhale is, or which part is going to be very hot, and which part will be cold. Now, so that's that one. So the app to actually create a training, that's what we call the Microsoft Guides desktop app. And as you can see here, it consists of a number of steps. Each step, number of tasks. Each task consists of a number of steps. And each of the steps, as you can see on the right side, can have a title, description, number of 2D objects, 3D parts which you can use in your scene. Now, how does that look? Let's show an example. So as you can see here, it tells me that I started a guide to learn the different parts of a Land Rover Defender. Now, in my situation, I'm using a Lego Technic model, because having a Land Rover in the room is not the best way. And so this is actually my step one of the introduction. And so what I can actually do is I can click on the next button to go to the next step within this task. You also see that I actually use a tag. So to start a training, you use a tag to actually connect your training to it. Now, in this case, you have something called branching, and branching allows me to do a selection. So where do I want to learn more about? The engine, the doors, or I want to stop with the training? Now, in this example, I'm going to learn the doors, because I want to show you how that works with, actually, we'll start with the engine. My apologies. Always funny when you don't exactly know what your video is doing. So it will explain what I need to do. So it says, in this case, we will explain more about the engine of the Land Rover. Can you indicate where the engine is? Now, I'm using actually a spatial trigger. As you can see, you see it lightning a little blue. And when I need to move my hand really in there, it triggers. And he says, open the hood. And I'm using an arrow, a 3D object, which is just part of the guide, to actually show you what happens. So how I need to open yes, that one. And on the right side, you see a spatial trigger, which also can be a button to make it easy to go to the next step. Now, another what could be, so you get some explanation about the engine. Now, what I also could do is, for example, so we need to close the hood again. So we want to do a next step. This is one of the earlier release. So I want to do, I want to learn more because I don't want to finish the introductionary. So let's learn about the doors. Now, in this example, I'm going to use different spatial anchors, spatial triggers, one for the left door, one from the right door. And you can imagine that which one of the doors you hit, you can actually make sure that you hit it right. So I'm asking, I'm not sure what the ask was, but I think, can you indicate the left or the right door? Now, when I move my hands close to the doors, you will notice again that there are spatial triggers. And actually, by selecting the door, it says, yeah, you found the right door. We needed to find the right door. What do you want to do next? And you can imagine that the way of using this technique can actually help me. So think about an enterprise situation where somebody has to remove a certain part of the machine to go to the next step. And by moving his hand in that space, it will actually jump to the next step and to make sure that you, it can actually indicate if you have performed that step. Now, the other thing, which is an interesting one, which I don't have a demo of, but the one I want to explain is to combine augmented training with real-time data. And guides can actually be used together with Power Apps and with Dynamics. So how could that work? So let's say we have a big machine and I want to do a training, augmented training around it. But the training step requires, for example, to know if the machine is turned off or if the temperature is rising. And based on if the temperature is rising or go down, I need to do a next step. It means that I need to know what of the values of that sensors are, of that machine. So the machine has a number of IoT sensors, and that IoT data goes into an IoT hub, and that one I actually bind to what we call an asset within Dynamics. So the machine itself is an asset within Dynamics, and I've bound my IoT data to that. Now, all data in Dynamics is stored in what we call nowadays Microsoft Dataverse, or what was originally the CDS. Now, as you maybe have heard of, we also have the Power Platform. And Power Platform allows us to do things like Power Apps, Power Automate, which means workflow, creating workflows. Now, what we can do is create a guide and then call in the guide a Power App. And that Power App is actually leveraging the Microsoft Dataverse database to get the IoT data for that certain step. And since I'm now looking at maybe temperature in this case, I can decide what I need to do in the next step based on the temperature. And this actually makes it possible to combine different technologies. And this is what I explained in the beginning. These applications become powerful as soon as you start combining everything. Now, the third product I want to explain is Product Visualize. Now, Product Visualize is a way of streamlining the sales process. At the moment, it's in public preview, so keep that in mind. And it only works on iOS devices, so at the moment for like a tablet. So the first thing what you do is, so let's say we want to do a sell within client. It uses Microsoft Dynamics Sales. So I have my client in Dynamics Sales, and what I can do is, let's say I want to sell a certain engine. But instead of going to the office and talk with the client, I can actually go on the work floor and say, now let's place that model in your actual space and see how it fits. So what you see here is that the lady is placing the machine at the right spot and positioning it somewhat. So the client can now actually see for itself by walking around it with iOS, like augmented reality, seeing how the machine looks like. But she can also directly identify if the machine is placed correctly or maybe some of the things are missing. Now, what you see here is that, for example, the rotor needs to be on the other side. That's one of the remarks. And you can actually create nodes within Dynamics when Product Visualize. And that plate needs to be removed. The cool thing about it is that the information is directly posted to the technical team within the organization, and they can actually respond back that this is not a problem or can be fixed. And this technology helps you to really quickly sell products to clients. Now, the last thing I want to go through is mixed reality services. Now, as I said, when you talk about mixed reality services, you're actually starting to build your own applications. And that can be done for a mobile device, a smart tablet, but also for HoloLens 2 or even for a VR headset. It depends a little bit on the different services which are out there. Now, Microsoft has currently four, it were three, and last week it became four, different mixed reality services. I'm not sure if I can call the last one a service, but I think it is. So let's start with the first one. So we have Azure Remote Rendering, which allows you to render incredibly large models onto a HoloLens device or onto a desktop PC. Next one is Azure Spatial Anchors. I'm going to show that also in the next few slides. And it allows you to actually create persistent points of interest within the world. Azure Object Anchors are mostly used to identify a certain object and allow you to actually position a 3D object on top of that and align it in a really precise way, allowing you to build applications which support your process of fixing issues or building machines. And the last one, but definitely not least, during Microsoft Ignite, it became known to the world, called Microsoft Mesh. And Microsoft Mesh is not really a service, it's more a platform which actually leverages some of these services to allow you to build immersive multi-user and cross-platform solutions. Now, let's start with Azure Remote Rendering. Now, what Azure Remote Rendering does, it is a service in Azure, and it allows me very easily to use large models. Now, let's say this works for HoloLens 2, and it works for and HoloLens 1 actually also, and desktop. Now, on a normal HoloLens, the max use of polygons is around 300,000 for your whole scene, which is a lot. But in some cases, your client wants to have more details. So in this case, you will see an engine which exists of 100 million polygons, which is rendered on a HoloLens device. And the way of how it's done is it connects to you upload the model to the cloud for a storage account, and then there are servers spinning up in Azure, and those servers are actually rendering for both of the eyes the stream on the with the high quality, and it streams back to your application. Now, you build applications with Unity, so there is a specific you can integrate. There is a specific SDK to connect to Azure Remote Rendering, and it also allows you, therefore, to build hybrid solutions. So while the object is streamed to your application, you're able to build, let's say, gestures around it, or show specific information to explain a certain part, or to do like an exploded view. You can choose for two different services. You have a normal and you have a premium version. The normal goes to a certain amount of polygons, and the other one goes actually to an infinite number of polygons. So you can even go higher than 100 million. Now, the second service I want to explain is Spatial Anchors. Now, what Spatial Anchors does is is it is able to map and persist. It maps and persists 3D content. And what you see in the movie here is actually creating you can call it a point cloud, but it is not that. But it identifies a certain area based on different points. So it's not storing video, it's not storing images of the device, so it is completely safe. It is storing like a blueprint of that environment. And because of that, it can recognize that environment again when it uses the SDK to see if this environment is known. And therefore, it's able to find the spatial anchor again. Now, it is an SDK which can be used cross-platform. So you can use it on HoloLens 2, you can use it for iOS, for Android. And it allows you for how to do that. And the scenarios are incredible. Think about connecting real-time information when you walk through a room or a hallway, like here on the right side. Create collaborative experiences, meaning since I can use a spatial anchor to position a certain object in a room, multiple people together can share that spatial anchor and see that same object in the room, and think about even to make it more immersive, that one is sitting in another country in another room and seeing the same information as I'm doing. And a third one, which is really interesting, think about augmented reality wayfinding. Since I know the space, I'm able to make spatial anchors to make like a route through a building. And the cool thing about this is it will work everywhere. It works outside, it works indoors, it doesn't require a GPS or something, it just works. Now, the last one, and this is also almost the last part of my presentation, is Microsoft Mesh. Now, on Ignite this year, Microsoft Mesh was released. And what Microsoft Mesh is actually a platform built on top of Microsoft Azure. And it allows you to develop applications to make more immersive, more multi-user, and cross-platform. And the things I just say were things I just said also by the other services. And you can imagine that the other services are actually leveraged by this platform to allow you to easily create. Now, to give you a little bit of understanding, let's say I want to create a multi-user application. That means that I need some way of getting data over, getting the position of the user over, seeing the user in the same room, knowing where the user moves to, knows what the user is doing. Now, normally, if you would build yourself all that functionality, it will take a tremendous amount of time. But what Microsoft Mesh does, it supports you with a number of different technologies, like the multi-user one is one of them, to easily build your applications. So it is a multi-device support model, which means it works on HoloLens, VR, on iOS, on desktop computers. On top of that, they have the core platform. And the core platform is actually leveraging a lot of what is in Office 365. Think about users. So security is in there with the identity. Think about the graph. The graph is really interesting because the graph gives me all kinds of data from the Office 365 environment, from Dynamics, from anything which is in there. It creates a solid infrastructure. And they already have laid out a model for billing, audio and video support. Now, on top of that, they created 4 capabilities. One is immersive presence. So what immersive presence means is that I'm able to be present in the same room, and I'm going to show that in a demo after this one, while I'm not actually here. So so it means that I can have a talk with someone in Germany, so with a colleague of mine, and he can be in the same room while he's just at home. The second one is spatial maps. It allows you very easily to map a complete environment, by just walking around it with a HoloLens device, because you're using those 4 grayscale cameras and that depth sensor. And it can actually combine all that information on all different users together to create a spatial map, which you can actually benefit from by building solutions around it. Now, the third one is holographic rendering, which allows you, that's a little bit about Azure Remote Rendering. It's about rendering large-scale models into your application and build solutions around that. And last but not least is the multi-user synchronization. So it has a capability in there which allows me very easily to quickly build solutions which supports multi-using, meaning that if I move a certain part on the 3D object, that another user is actually seeing that too. He sees the movement, but you can also see what I've done, and we can collaborate around that. Now, on top of those capabilities, we have the toolkit, which is the Mesh SDK in the UX constructs. And that toolkit allows you to build your own applications. Now, what Microsoft has done, they already created what we call HoloLens Mesh app. It is a preview app built on top of the toolkit to show some of these capabilities to see how that works. Now, that's one of which I'm going to demo. The second one is AllSpace VR. They are going to integrate it in AllSpace VR. And on Ignite, the keynote was an incredible cool example of that, where you saw that people were literally holographically rendered into AllSpace VR. Now, there are two integrations coming up. One is with Microsoft Teams, one is with Microsoft Dynamics 365. And of course, you have a lot of partners which are going to rebuild their apps or change their apps using this toolkit. Now, to give you an example of how this works, what you see here is, this is my living room. I'm sorry for all the toys. I have 4 children, so you have a lot of toys laying around. But what the cool thing is, what you see here is, this is Matthias. Matthias is my colleague from Germany, so he's in another country, and we are together in my living room. And it is for him the same in his living room. We are also. And what you just saw is he created a model, and I was able to pick up that model also with my hands. So it allows us to work around different elements and play around with it. He created another one. So the table, what you see on the bottom here, is actually the place where everything is laid around. Means that in his living room, there is also now a table, and he is seeing my avatar as I'm seeing his avatar. Now, what you maybe already see a little bit is that those avatars look really similar to the AllSpace VR avatars, which is indeed correct. Now, what I can do is for example, I can import my own content, but also can, for example, create content like a jellyfish. And you see I'm also in integration with OneDrive. I can pick up the jellyfish, put it around. Now, you see Matthias working with the moon and with Earth, creating a solution. Now, this is a very good example which leverages different types of the platform and the capabilities. Now, let's have a wrap up for Enterprise XR. Now, what I've tried to show you is a high overview, because it's if I would go much deeper per item, I can actually spend hours per each of them. So the things we went over are Connect for Azure, Microsoft HoloLens as devices. So within the enterprise organization, HoloLens is mostly used. And nowadays we have the industrial edition, which allows us even to use in clean rooms and on certain locations where normally HoloLens was not allowed to be used. Now in the modern workplace, I've showed you SharePoint Spaces. It makes it very easy to build your own VR content. It's low code or no code actually. You don't use code, you use just the web parts to build your environment, and then you can view it on the screen or using a VR headset. Now, we talked about the first-party XR apps, Remote Assist guides, and Product Visualize, where Remote Assist can be used on any device. Guides is mostly used on HoloLens, and Product Visualize is only used on iOS at the moment. And we talked about mixed reality services, the Azure Spatial Anchors, remote rendering, and Microsoft Mesh. Now, the last thing I want to again say, because I think it's one of the most important things, is combining all these technologies and integrate it with platforms, because that actually builds rich and interesting applications within the XR space. Now, hopefully you enjoyed my presentation. If you have any questions, you can, I think, ask in the chat here, or you can always contact me on email, Twitter, or LinkedIn. I'm always happy to help out if that's possible. Thank you.
That was an amazing session. It was really amazing to see how technology is progressing. So I guess everybody was really excited to see how technology works. For the questions, I guess they can definitely contact you personally. So I guess that's it. Thank you, Mr. Alexander, for taking your time off your busy schedule for being with us here today. It was amazing to hear out your valuable insights you had for us. I'm sure our audiences really enjoyed listening to this session. Before we sign off, I would like to mention that the feedback form link will be posted so that fill it up as soon as possible so that you can grab your certificates, participation certificates by Hack the Mountains team. Stay tuned with us for this next session on opportunities through hackathons by Siddhant Dayalwal on 21st March. See you all there. Thank you everyone for being a part of this session. Bye everyone. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.